Alright, let's just climb this thing and get it over with. What? There is no way! I'm not your dad. Definitely not your dad!
Catherine Full Body is a remaster and definitive edition from 2019 of the video game Catherine. So since I'm always late to the party, I just recently put over 100 hours into this game towards the end of 2023. I was impressed with this game. So much so, I decided to make a video on it. A story of love and lust, all revolving around an accidental love triangle, and sometimes a love square, that centers around our protagonist, Vincent Brooks, a character I initially disliked, but he quickly grew on me as we journeyed through his nightmares together. In these nightmares, all other characters appear as sheep. This may seem strange, but don't worry, there's a lot of symbolism in this game, and this is just one of the more in-your-face examples. Now let's start at the beginning. We are the viewer, and you're watching the Golden Playhouse. Don't get lost, follow the shepherd into the world of Catherine Full Body with me. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to let me know you want to see more content like this. Thank you. I also want to drop a quick spoiler warning here. While this video is not a plot summary, I will be discussing some details regarding the plot, and I really think this game is best experienced with at least one blind playthrough first. You have been warned. Let's begin with the gameplay. The gameplay of Catherine is a mix of a social sim around our favorite bar, the Stray Sheep, remember that name, and a sort of puzzle platformer where Vincent must move blocks around to climb his way to the top of an ever-crumbling tower. The game is composed of 10 nightmares, each containing different types of specialty blocks, with the last one only appearing if you pursue a specific ending path. There are different types of specialty blocks, such as crumbling blocks and trap blocks, to mix up the playstyle. I found most of these blocks to not be much of a problem until you get too comfortable after experience or you're rushing due to trying to get a gold rank on a hard difficulty playthrough. Too many times did I attempt to step across some ice blocks only to be flung to my death due to the pressure hard mode puts on you to move quickly. Full Body also adds a remix mode in which there are connected block formations that can really make simple climbing more challenging, as a lot of these strategies you spent all of your first playthrough developing and attempting to master may no longer work due to being interrupted by these remix blocks. One thing I noticed from my playthrough was how awful I was to begin. I was barely getting bronze prizes on some of the easier stages. This could possibly be due to the fact that I have minimal experience in puzzle games. In fact, as far as I know, this is an original style of gameplay. I often try to brute force my way up walls by building basic staircases, but I quickly learned this was not going to work. After some frustration, I gave in and started to memorize these techniques the game throws at you through various NPCs on what are called landings between each stage. This is critical to being able to succeed on some stages, as oftentimes the stage can present a relatively challenging pattern to figure out, and those basic staircases just ain't gonna cut it. Once you get the hang of these techniques and start implementing these strategies, most of the levels start to feel pretty easy. Aside from the challenge mode babble, if you've attempted it, you know what I'm talking about. I think the most challenging thing for me was thinking in 3D. That is that not only can we push the blocks left and right, but you can build three-dimensional staircases in some cases, where instead of just climbing left and right, we're climbing forwards and backwards as well. This is especially highlighted in the 7th level of the game, and it took me more than a few tries to ingrain this strategy into my mind when climbing, and I'd say I still struggle to recognize it in climbing patterns, despite finishing all of the challenge stages and getting gold on every hard mode level. I found using the Rapunzel minigame in the bar, which is essentially just the same as the Nightmares, except instead of a time limit, you have a limited number of moves, to be extremely helpful in practicing these strategies through trial and error. Ultimately, that's what the game boils down to, trial and error. Hell, there's even an undo button, and if you're anything like me, you used it a lot on your playthroughs. The stages themselves vary in setting on a nightly basis, ranging from a torture chamber to heaven. And one major strength of the game is the narratives these stages subtly drive home. Almost every night you will face a boss, symbolic of something Vincent has struggled with that day, such as a baby after his girlfriend reveals her pregnancy, or what the game calls the immoral beast, after Vincent believes he has cheated on his long-term girlfriend for the first time. Yeah, you can figure out the symbolism there.
Come on now. Is it this time? Seriously? Give me a break!
These bosses all have different types of attacks, which for the most part aren't difficult, but rather just plain annoying. The most frustrating attack in my opinion was the final boss of the optional stage 10 that creates clones of Vincent who can quickly ruin an entire foundation you were careful to set up and cause a frustrating reset. Couple these nuisances with various different block types and the boss stages can become quite challenging. Most nights feature different block types, such as the torture chamber introducing us to the trap block, and you often need to adjust on the fly to adapt to whatever new mechanic the game throws at you. I find the most irritating to be bomb blocks, as most of the time it seems the easiest path forward requires you activating a bomb block that inevitably brings down the entire path forward. This is what I believe to be an intentional mechanic by the developers to encourage the player to think outside of the box and realize maybe the easiest path forward isn't always the best path forward. Now as for the social sim, it essentially consists of Vincent hanging out with the fellas at a bar called the Stray Sheep. I wonder if there's any connection to all those sheep in Vincent's nightmares, hint hint. I love the social aspect of Atlus's wildly popular series Persona, so of course I found this enjoyable. Although it is much more limited than Persona and that you can only roam the bar, what matters most is the character relationships here, which I'll get into in a moment. Time passes as you talk to different patrons at the bar, and if you want to save everybody, you'll have to somewhat plan what order you talk to your fellow customers, though I mostly had no issue with time and getting to speak to everybody. You also get the occasional text message or phone call from your girlfriend Catherine, your love affair Catherine, and the local amnesiac character you've taken under your wing. Oh yeah, their name is also Catherine, no relation.
There it is.
Got a mail.
Catherine?
I'm not sure about the spelling, but, that's the name I remember.
Wait, when she told me her name, did I only hear the last part? Oh, I see. So you're another one. Okay.
These interactions can move a meter that pops up when you make decisions, either closer to red or blue, which naturally one might think are good and evil, but the game explains they are actually freedom and order. Although typically the douche answer is the red freedom, while the kind good boyfriend answer is the blue order, so I still somewhat see it as good and evil. Maybe it's just my little pea brain. When on the landings and the nightmares, you get asked questions between every stage that heavily move this meter as well, and ultimately influence which ending you will receive. I think this was a nice touch to give more freedom and control to Vincent, and made you care more about what to say in your everyday conversations, even if they were inconsequential to the meter. But come on, who wants a bad ending on their first playthrough? You also heavily direct what ending you're going to get through your choices on the landings between subsections of the nightmares. These landing pads essentially are the other half of the social sim, and that you'll talk to most of the same people who frequent the bar in sheep form, and talking to them can end up saving their lives, as many of them become depressed and believe death is better than living. That's deep. You also enter the confessional booth on these landings, where you talk to an unknown voice who asks you morality questions, typically centered around relationships. This is where your endings are heavily factored, as your answers to these questions either heavily affect the mysterious meter or can directly send you down certain ending paths. Despite being an extremely important gameplay mechanic, the confessional booth is overshadowed a bit to me in comparison to the side character interactions, as this is where they really open up and their stories shine. Honestly, learning about these characters and their depth is incredible. Overall, I found the character interactions with the side characters that also frequented the bar to be my favorite part of the game, as you build trust and a strong relationship with them to the point they eventually open up to you about their past. And wow, they have some captivating stories and reasoning for their less than model citizen way of living life. While the landings are nice, I found the bar to be a nice constant in the game. After the stress of completing a challenging nightmare, you know you'll always go back to drinking with your buddies at your local hub, talking about life's problems and trying to figure out what the right thing to do is in Vincent's very complicated 9 days.
Hey, I'm just a stray sheep in the field of life too, you know.
Now that's Vincent. Cheating twice? He's really gone astray.
Speaking of Vincent's very complicated 9, or depending on your choices 10 days, let's talk about the story of this game. I want to say the twist on the big bad was predictable, but I was completely wrong, and it seems so obvious after finishing the game. The bartender at your beloved Stray Sheep, did you remember that name, has actually been hurting all the men that are wasting fertility in women into these nightmares. Preventing women from having babies comes in many forms through our different characters in the game, whether that's through commitment issues like our protagonist Vincent, or misogyny like our friend Todd. Now here's where I admit, I thought our friend Toby that we enjoy drinks with every night was gonna be the big bad. He was the only one of our core friends that did not experience the nightmares, and I'm not sure if it's just me, but he sounds exactly like the ominous voice we hear in the confession booth on the landings every night.
Regardless, I'll continue to ask you questions. Who's the father?
I was so sure it was Toby, I completely missed the creepy, sunglasses indoor, older gentleman staring at us from across the bar every night, and missed the tiny detail that he's the only character in the entire game that directly speaks to C. Catherine aside from Vincent.
Allow me to introduce myself. I, Thomas Mutton, and... Okay. To sum it up.
Sorry, Toby. This is the punishment you get for being a nice guy. Speaking of which, remember that accidental member of our love triangle, C. Catherine? Turns out it was no accident at all, and we enter a twist. Well, the twist that she's actually a succubus sent to tempt men so that our ever-present bartender could have more victims was a lot easier to predict for me. I'm not patting myself on the back here, it's just obvious throughout the game. Though admittedly, the game does do a good job of making you question if this is a red herring throughout, as C. Catherine seems to develop genuine feelings for Vincent, and acts ignorant to his relationship with K. Catherine. She does give slight insight to Q. Catherine, who I'll just call Ren from now on, and that she hates the piano music, and visibly is uncomfortable with Ren's playing. I will say Ren's twists was a bit spoiled with the opening sequence of some sort of giant beast in hot pursuit, somewhat hinting to the fact that something supernatural is going on here, but I wouldn't call the specifics predictable. Although I will say, I wish the shadow of this beast wasn't detailed. Maybe even just a roar would have sufficed if they really wanted to include some sort of hint here. Otherwise, I would have thought this was just some amnesiac person that needed our help, with maybe slight suspicion of something deeper going on.
Hello? Who's that?
What are you doing here? Oh god, this can't be happening.
So you need to have a chat with Vincent, right? Come in, make yourself at home.
Let's go back to our love triangle, and sometimes square, as that is one of the central driving points of the game. Now the reason I initially disliked Vincent was for cheating on K. Catherine and not coming clean about it immediately, which was only worsened when she revealed her pregnancy. Admittedly, it does seem Vincent tries to do the right thing and come clean, but he's either unlucky or there are greater forces at play making the situations worse. You decide. Anyways, once it is revealed that Vincent never really cheated, as C. Catherine was somewhat just in his head, and that she was heavily manipulating him, I became a bit more sympathetic to our protagonist. Though I still think his handling of the whole situation was questionable at best, but hey, it's easy to judge from the outside. As for K. Catherine, it seemed like she just wanted different things in life than our protagonist. K. Catherine wants a traditional marriage and babies, while Vincent just wants to live what he views as free. And K. Catherine admittedly can be downright intimidating. It seemed the game encouraged the idea that Vincent staying with K. Catherine, his girlfriend of 5 years mind you, was the right thing to do because they'd been together so long. It wasn't what Vincent wanted to do. This is where that ever-present meter representing freedom and order comes into play. The right thing to do by society's standard is stay with her, get married, have kids, and grow up essentially. Vincent seems like what he wants to do is live free, drink at the bar every night with his buddies, and just take things easy. Plain and simple, the guy has commitment issues, and it seems he frequently questions if K. Catherine is someone he wants to spend the rest of his life with. This uncertainty seems to bother Vincent, and ultimately, this is the cause of the nightmares. Though I suppose that makes C. Catherine somewhat unnecessary. I guess she's just there to supplement Vincent's relationship problems. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if you have some insight on C. Catherine's advances, since it seems Vincent would have gotten the nightmares anyway. Maybe there was some symbolism I missed? Speaking of which, this game is ripe with symbolism, which I'm going to say now I am far from fully understanding. Something about that draws me in further though. Maybe it's human nature that we're drawn to the mysterious, and my desire to understand all the little hints this game has that showcase some sort of deeper meaning. A few of my favorites from the game, beginning with the most obvious, which I feel we have to mention, is the meaning of the sheep. We all turn into sheep in our nightmares. We drink at the stray sheep. Hell, Boss's real name is Thomas Mutton. You can't ignore the constant presence of sheep in this game. There are a few different interpretations to this, and I think they're all definitely valid, from being as basic as to when you fall asleep you count sheep, to the idea of sheep going astray without their shepherd, leading our characters back to the stray sheep.
Excuse me.
Oh, what are you doing here?
Did you people know the reason you're taught as a child to count sheep so you'll fall asleep is...
Yeah, sheep rhymes with sleep or something.
There's also the idea of herd mentality representing the order and chaos routes, as if we follow the societal norms of the herd mentality, we end up with K. Catherine, versus pursuing freedom and forging our own path pushes us away from K. Catherine towards an alternative route. There is also some merit to the theory that the reason everyone sees themselves as humans and everyone else as sheep is representative of individuality and the human nature that we all see ourselves as unique. Sheep are a central role in this game, and obviously were chosen by the developers for various different reasons. I could spend hours talking about the different forms of symbolism in this game, from the Rapunzel arcade game, which pretty closely aligns with this game, to the lore of Ishtar and their role in all of this. The game is deep. Share your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear more about the lore of this game, but for now, we will move on to my favorite part of the game, and that is the side characters. Throughout the game, there are various different sheep you encounter on the landings of each nightmare. These sheep have direct counterparts in the real world, and initially you think these guys are also cheaters, and that's why they are experiencing the nightmares, but oh, it goes much deeper than that. Firstly, we learn that the men aren't subject to the nightmares due to cheating, as many of the men claim they've never cheated, despite the rumor that this is the cause of the nightmares. But rather, the reason is for wasting fertile women's time for various different reasons that ultimately boils down to not making babies with women.
When there are people like you who spend a long amount of time with a partner without commitment, it impedes the population model. The rate of population growth is less than optimal.
Take some of my personal favorite side characters, Archie and Todd, as an example. Archie is a severe womanizer who actually is having relations with his superior and friend, Todd's wife. Todd views women as objects and thinks a man's status should be judged on how many women he gets. Yikes. Neither of these guys sound great on a surface level, but once you learn their reasonings for their behavior, you don't agree, but you understand the source of their way of thinking.
He's gonna kill me. With his axe. Like he used to.
In my case, it's my mother. Coming after me. To take me back. To lock me away. I managed to get away that day, but I've been running all this time since then, and now...
Archie was kept in a basement, unclothed, where his own mother committed unspeakable acts to him, often until his escape, while Todd was severely beaten by his father, so much so that he still has terrible scars on his back. Todd's father was also a womanizer, who didn't view women as much but a sign of success and wealth, to which, through his many beatings, Todd adopted the same philosophy. Poor Archie definitely carries his trauma with him, and as a result is repulsed by all women, manipulating them to rob them for what he views as punishment to women for being so repulsive in his mind. Both of these characters are obviously damaged, and I think they highlight the message of considering the why before judging someone's way of thinking. I'm not saying to agree with them, but I can understand there are deep-rooted psychological issues at play here, and I think both men would benefit from a positive influence and some professional help. If the player so chooses, Vincent fills this role throughout the game, encouraging these two and many other of our side characters to keep climbing. And that isn't just for the nightmare, but for life as well. Keep pushing, hang in there, and maybe these guys can become good people by the end of this whole experience if we can keep them alive long enough to get there. If you're interested in all of these side characters like I was, make sure to follow all their paths all the way through, as they will die if you don't frequently talk to them when they are available. And wow, their stories are so heart-wrenching and really show some creativity from Atlas. Let's not forget Erica either. No reason. Just a special shout out to our favorite waitress here. Now we get to the endings, which are essentially broken down into 4 categories: K. Catherine, C. Catherine, Ren, and the single life. These all have their own variations of good, bad, and true, and as a result, there are 13 total endings. I know that math doesn't add up, but some of the true endings are expansions on the original game's true endings, giving more satisfying conclusions, so there end up being 13 total. These endings are determined by key questions in the confessional booth, alongside where that freedom order meter lies, ultimately meaning, hey, your decisions do matter in this game. While I'm sure most people's favorite endings differ, I have to say the new true endings tend to be my favorites, see Catherine's true ending of time traveling and falling in love to have little, possibly demon babies is the best in my opinion, despite being a bit out there. K. Catherine dumping Vincent and becoming famous, only to reject Vincent again at her red carpet, seems most satisfying for her life, as it often seems Vincent is holding her back. And becoming an international space superstar with Ren is nothing short of a happy ending for all parties, as even K. Catherine accepts this and is motivated to be more successful than Vincent. I will say the ending with Ren's brother being a bunch of little aliens is a little out there, but hey, it provides a good laugh, and this is a game where you turn into sheep in your nightmares. I also admittedly find Ren to be the least practical romance in my eyes, but it's because I see their relationship as more platonic, given the age gap and that Vincent fills the role of a mentor in their teacher-student-esque relationship, but that's just my personal preference. On the other hand, I do feel the build-up to a romance with C. Catherine was somewhat lacking, and maybe I haven't experienced a particular route, but it seemed like no matter what, Vincent always dumps her, and then if you pursue one of her ending routes, he gets boss to call her up again. This felt a little out of the blue, and I know he has some revelations his last night in the confessional booth. It just felt as though it was really lacking some sort of build up to him saying, hey, actually I do want to be with the succubus lady. Anyway, some of the bad endings are funny, and the true freedom ending leaves you hopeful for Vincent's future, and maybe this is the best ending we see throughout the game for our hero. Vincent doesn't really have his life together, and maybe being single for a while is good for him. Him winning a big bet on a women's wrestling match and pursuing his dream of space travel, which is also the background screen on his phone if you didn't notice, feels pretty satisfying for Vincent. Something that I don't think would happen with any of his other romance paths. Aside from Ren, of course.
I don't know, man. Nothing makes sense here. This is the woman's wrath, after all. Or so I've heard.
Overall, there are many different endings and many different ways to play the game, but you're more than likely to get a great adventure with a satisfying conclusion. The awesome thing about this game is it doesn't take long to play through, and if you don't want to keep doing the nightmares every night, you can actually skip through them to experience all the story this game has to offer. Though on subsequent playthroughs, the story is mostly unchanged until around night 6-ish. I enjoyed all my different playthroughs and picked up on some new things throughout. The game does pose an interesting existential crisis, and the characters really draw you in. I think the strength of this game is the world building, the storytelling, and the decision making forced on the player, as Vincent really does find himself in some rather perplexing situations. Atlas also really gives life to all the characters. Pretty much none of these characters are one-dimensional, and their backstories are captivating. If I got anything out of this game, it taught me to look at the bigger picture and consider the why before looking down on someone for their actions. Characters like Archie and Todd, though their actions aren't great, have some really pretty intense trauma that is the root of their behavior. And if you don't take the time to talk to them, you may just write them off as terrible people.
I was abandoned. I guess I can't help it if I'm worthless.
This is a strong theme throughout, working together to overcome obstacles with our protagonist Vincent at the center of it all. If Vincent had simply written these guys off as bad people and avoided them, they will die, and I think we can all agree they don't deserve this fate. Anyways, this was a beautiful game, and as much as I would love some sort of sequel, I do think the story ends in a beautiful place, and I'm happy with this project from Atlas. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video so you can stay up to date on more content like this. Thank you again.